USS Phoenix was a Brooklyn-class light cruiser and the third vessel to be named after the capital of Arizona. She would be laid down on the 15th of April 1935 as the fifth ship of the Brooklyn class. She would be launched on the 13th of March 1938 at the New York Shipbuilding Corporation in Camden, New Jersey, and finally commissioned on the 3rd of October of the same year, with Captain John W. Rakin as the CO. She would be a 10,000-ton vessel as designed, which was compliant to the Washington Naval Treaty, but she'd be 9,767 tons standard, and this raised to 12,207 tons fully laden. She'd be 180 meters along at the waterline and 185.42 meters overall. Her beam would be 18.77 meters and a draft of 6.02 meters, raising to 7.3 meters at full load. She was powered by 8 steam boilers producing steam for 4 gear turbines, which each powered their own shaft, which got the ship up to about 32.5 knots. She would be armed with 5 6.6-inch 47 caliber guns. Now these guns were able to fire 8 to 10 rounds per minute from each barrel, and that is a maximum of 50 rounds per minute overall. They're able to fire out to 9.77 nautical miles or 20,000 yards with a 130 pound AP shell. The turrets were able to traverse 300 degrees and elevate to plus 40 degrees and depress to minus 5 degrees. 8 5-inch 25 caliber secondary guns. Now these guns were capable of firing out to 14,500 yards or 7.18 nautical miles. It was capable of firing at plus 85 degrees and depressing to minus 10 degrees. 8 50 caliber machine guns were also carried. These were capable up to 600 rounds per minute out to 0.97 nautical miles at 890 meters per second. Like most World War II US warships, the armament would be changed more to the heavy anti-aircraft side, and as such, by 1945, she'd be armed with her normal 5 6.6-inch guns, 8 single 5-inch guns, like before, but now she'd have 4 quad 40mm Bofors and 2 twin 40mm Bofor mounts for 120 rounds per minute out to 23,340 feet or 3.86 nautical miles, as well as having 18 single 20mm Orlocan anti-aircraft guns capable of 450 rounds per minute out to 2.37 nautical miles. She'd also be armoured by 5 to 3.25 inch belt, 2-inch decks, 6-inch barbettes, 6 to 1.25 inches on the turrets, and 5 to 2.25 inch conning tower. She would also carry 4 Seagull floatplanes with a below deck hangar and along with 2 steam catapults on the quarterdeck. The Phoenix would start her career by operating off the west coast of the United States until 1941, where she and the rest of the Pacific Fleet would be based out of Pearl Harbor, where on December 7th, 1941, she would be anchored northeast of Ford Island near the USS Solace. Now, the upper deck lookouts noticed the rising sun emblems on the aircraft and took them under fire, with all weapons that they were able to get a firing line on. Now, after the battle, she wasn't actually hit. She would then sail with the cruiser St. Louis, which was a modified Brooklyn class, and the USS Detroit, as well as several destroyers, as they, as an impromptu task group, went hunting for the Japanese aircraft carriers. But if you know history, you know that wouldn't go down well, because they wouldn't be found. After failing to find the Japanese aircraft carriers, she returned to Pearl Harbor, and then she'd take part in escorting the first convoy from Pearl to the mainland United States, where she would then return with another one. However, by January 1942, she would escort the troop ships along with 2 destroyers destined for Melbourne and Suva in the first large convoy to Australia since the attack on Pearl. The convoy had some significance, as the SS President Monroe was carrying P-40 Warhawk fighter aircraft intended for the Philippines and Java, along with munitions, supplies, and officers selected by the War Department to form the core of what was to become General MacArthur's headquarters in the Southwest Pacific. After this, Phoenix would continue to escort convoys to and from San Francisco to Australia, with a stint at escorting the USS Langley, the first carrier, now seaplane carrier, and also the Sea Witch. She would then subsequently break from the convoy and was sunk by Japanese aircraft. By this time, Phoenix handed over the escort of the convoy to HMS Enterprise. During the following months, Phoenix patrolled the Indian Ocean, escorting a convoy to Bombay, and was present at the evacuation of Java. By late 1942, under the command of Captain Joseph R. Redman, Phoenix was part of Task Force 44. With her accompanying destroyers of Helm, Monkford, and Patterson, she participated in Operation Lilliput, alternating with the Australian light cruiser HMAS Hobart, and her accompanying destroyers to cover the convoys south of New Guinea. Now, Phoenix departed Brisbane, Queensland, Australia for overhaul in Philadelphia Navy Yard in July of 1943, before carrying the Secretary of State Cordell Hull to Casablanca. She was then assigned to the 7th Fleet and sailed for the South Pacific. By Boxing Day of 1943, she and the cruiser Nashville bombarded Cape Gloucester on New Britain, smashing shore installations in a 4-hour bombardment. She would subsequently cover the landings on the islands as well as on a night raid in New Guinea, shelling shore installations. After a few months, in 1944, bombarding the living daylights out of Japanese positions in and around New Guinea, she would be attacked by Japanese aircraft on the 4th of June. She took 2 near misses from bombs, which killed 1 sailor and wounded 4 others. The ship would suffer leaks underwater, as well as damage to her propellers. The following night, she would be attacked by torpedo aircraft. This time, she was sailing through the Yapen Strait, but she avoided damage by throwing up a lot of gunfire and using her rudder. Phoenix and her task force frustrated an enemy attempt to reinforce their garrisons on the night of the 8th and 9th of June. When they were contacted by the American ships, the Japanese destroyers turned and fled at such high speed that only one US destroyer division was able to get within firing range. After a running fight of 3 hours at long range, Phoenix and her sister ships broke off the action. Now soon after, with Boise and 10 destroyers, Phoenix sortied from Salida Harbour in the Admiralty Islands and bombarded shore defences before American forces landed on New Four Island on the 2nd of July. After the battle, many dead Japanese and wrecked planes were found in the target area assigned to the USS Phoenix. By September, Boise, Nashville, Shropshire, Phoenix, and HMAS Australia joined the occupation of Morotai in the Molucca Islands. The cruisers shelled a nearby island to cover the landing and protect the assault forces as they went ashore against continuing light opposition. By October, the Philippine offensive had begun and the landings on Leyte had started. Phoenix would be assigned to the close covering group, bombarding the island within an inch of its life, and by the 20th, her guns had silenced the shore batteries and the enemy's strongpoint. She would then take part in the Battle of Surigao Strait, alongside Jesse Oldendorf's Standard class battleships which had survived the attack on Pearl Harbor. And now, coming back for some revenge, they would take on and obliterate the Southern force, including the 2 Fuso class battleships and the heavy cruiser Mogame, in which the latter survived the night attack, only to be sunk by aircraft later on. But Phoenix fired 4 spotting salvos, and on the 4th, hitting the Yamashiro. Once hit, 50 rounds per minute of 6-inch fire were heading her way. She would be sunk within 27 minutes. At some point, Fuso also followed suit, along with 3 other Japanese destroyers. After the battle, Phoenix then patrolled the mouth of Leyte Gulf to protect Allied positions on shore. On the morning of the 1st of November 1944, 10 enemy torpedo bombers attacked her and the accompanying ships. At 0945, Phoenix opened fire, and 5 minutes later, Claxon was hit by a kamikaze. However, almost at the same instant, hits from Phoenix's 5-inch guns set another plane ablaze, and that could not unfortunately prevent it from diving into the starboard bow of the USS Oman. At 0957, a plane was making a torpedo run on the Phoenix, but was shot down by the ship's machine gun fire. But in a few minutes, a bomber had hit the USS Kellen. After that, there was a lull of about 2.5 hours, when more kamikazes arrived, and at 1340 scored a hit on the US destroyer, the Abner Reed. Now, Japanese aircraft attacked the other destroyers as they stood by the sinking ships, but Phoenix shot down one of the raiders. Phoenix was attacked by aircraft and on the 5th of December was credited with assisting in the destruction of 2 attackers. 5 days later, a kamikaze attempted to crash into the ship, but was brought down by 40mm fire when only 100 meters away. It was at that time Phoenix suffered her only wartime fatality. While proceeding to the assault area of Mindoro on the 13th of December, the ship was constantly under air attack by single kamikazes, and that day a lone kamikaze hit the Nashville. On the 15th of December, a 5-inch shell from Phoenix brought down a circling plane at 8,500 yards. The ship then furnished her usual fire support and covering the landing forces. This gave the Allies a base from which to strike Japan's shipping lanes through the South China Sea and to soften up Luzon for further more landings. En route to the Lingayen Gulf for the invasion of Luzon, lookouts on board the USS Phoenix sighted the conning tower of a diving submarine. The submarine submerged and fired 2 torpedoes at the Phoenix, which she dodged. Then, the USS Taylor, a Fletcher-class destroyer, forced the midget sub to the surface and then subsequently rammed it. Although this time, I think it went off better than what happened in the movie. Phoenix would then start to cover the minesweeping operations of Borneo from the 29th of June to the 7th of July. Now, resistance from coastal guns was unusually heavy, and the mines and shell fire sank or damaged 11 minesweepers. Now, Phoenix was then en route to Pearl Harbor for overhaul when Japan surrendered. She headed home, and upon reaching the Panama Canal on the 6th of September, she joined the Atlantic Fleet. Her status was reduced to in commission, in reserve, at Philadelphia on the 28th of February 1946. She was then decommissioned on the 3rd of July 1946 and remained at Philadelphia until she was sold to Argentina on the 9th of April 1951. Phoenix would then be commissioned into the Argentine Navy as the 17 de Octubre on the 17th of October 1951, where she was then renamed to the General Belgrano in 1956. She would then be upgraded in 1967/1968 with new Dutch radars and the British Seacat anti-aircraft missiles. Now, not much is actually known about what Belgrano did between said commissioning to obviously 1982, because there's not really that many sources that I could actually find. But what I imagine she would have done, as being a sailor, I'm pretty sure she would have done some training cruises, some gun exercises, some ADEXs, and a couple of stuff like that, essentially. And then she would have had a couple of refits, and then obviously 1982 will come around, which is what we're going to get onto now. So, 1982, Argentina invades the Falkland Islands, and as such, on the 2nd of April 1982, Britain declared a maritime exclusion zone of 200 nautical miles around the Falkland Islands, within which any Argentine warship or naval auxiliary entering the MEZ might be attacked by a British nuclear-powered submarine, or SSN. If you've watched my Churchill or Conqueror videos, you probably know what's coming, or if you've read up about this ship or anything to do with the Falklands War, you know what's coming. So, on the 23rd of April, the British government clarified in a message that was passed via the Swiss embassy in Buenos Aires to the Argentine government that any Argentine ship or aircraft that was considered to pose a threat to British forces would be attacked. And on the 30th, this was upgraded to a total exclusion zone, which within any sea vessel or aircraft from any country entering the zone might be fired upon without further warning. The zone was stated to be without prejudice to the right of the United Kingdom to take whether additional measures may be needed in exercise of its right of self-defence under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. The concept of the total exclusion zone was a novelty in maritime law. The Law of the Sea Convention had no provision of such to be instrumented. Its purpose seems to have been to increase the amount of time available to ascertain whether a vessel in the zone was hostile or not. Regardless of the uncertainty of the zone's legal status, it was widely respected by shipping of neutral nations. Now, after a war was declared, the Argentine military junta began to reinforce the islands in late April when it realised that the British task force was heading south. As part of these movements, Argentine naval units were ordered to take up positions around the island. 2 task groups designated 79.1, which included the aircraft carrier, the 25 de Mayo, plus 2 Argentinian Type 42 destroyers, and 79.2, which included 3 Exeter-armed Drummond-class corvettes, and these both sailed north. The General Belgrano left her port on the 26th of April. 2 destroyers, the Puerto Buena and the Hippolyto Borchardt, were attached to the Task Force 79.2, which, together with a tanker, the Puerto Rosales, joined Belgrano to form Task Group 79.3. By the 29th of April, the ships were patrolling the Burwood Bank, south of the Falkland Islands. And on the 30th of April, the Belgrano was detected by the British nuclear-powered hunter-killer submarine, HMS Conqueror. The submarine approached over the following day, and on the 1st of May 1982, Admiral Juan Lombardo ordered all Argentine naval units to seek out the British task force around the island and launch a quote-unquote massive attack, which was to be happening this next day. Now, the Belgrano was outside of the MEZ and was ordered to the southeast. Now, Lombardo's signal was intercepted by British intelligence, and as a result, the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and her War Cabinet, meeting at Chequers the following day, agreed to a request from Admiral Terence Lewin, the Chief of the Defence Staff, to alter the rules of engagement and allow to attack on General Belgrano outside the exclusion zone. Although the group was outside the British declared total exclusion zone of 200 nautical miles, the British decided that she was a threat. After consultation at cabinet level, Thatcher agreed that Commander Chris Wareford Brown should attack the Belgrano. At 15:57 Falkland Islands time on the 2nd of May, Conqueror fired 3 21-inch Mark 8 Mod 4 torpedoes, conventional non-guided torpedoes, each with a 363kg warhead at the Belgrano. Conqueror was also equipped with the newer Mark 24 Tigerfish homing torpedo, but there were doubts about its reliability. And as such, 3 torpedoes were heading Belgrano's way. The first torpedo hit just forward of a turret, which then blew a 10 to 15 meter segment of the bow clean off. Now, this torpedo would hit in front of the main belt and also the main torpedo defense, but the torpedo bulkhead held, leaving the ship watertight for now. Now, it's believed that no one was actually in that front section of the ship when the bow was blown off. The second torpedo struck about 3/4 of the way along the ship, just outside of the aft part of the main belt. Now, the torpedo punched through the side of the ship before exploding in the aft machinery room. The explosion also tore upwards through 2 mess decks and a relaxation area, before finally ripping a 20-meter long hole in the main deck. Later reports put the death count in that area to 275 men. After the explosion, the ship would fill rapidly with smoke. The explosion would also knock out the Belgrano's electrical power system, preventing her from putting out a radio distress call. Though the forward bulkheads held, the water was rushing in through the hole created by the second torpedo, and it could not be pumped out due to the lack of electrical power. In addition, although the ship had been at action stations, she was sailing with watertight doors open. The ship began to list to port and sink towards the bow. 20 minutes after the attack, at 16:24, Captain Bonzo ordered the crew to abandon ship. Inflatable life rafts were deployed, and the evacuation began without panic. The 2 escorts were unaware of what was happening to the Belgrano, as they were out of touch with her in the gloom and had not seen the distress rockets or signal lamps. Added to the confusion, the crew of the Borchardt felt the impact of possibly a third torpedo striking the end of its run. With an examination after the ship came alongside, there was an exact impact mark consistent with a torpedo. The 2 ships continued on their course westward and began dropping depth charges. By the time the ships realised that something had happened, the Belgrano was sunk. It was already dark, the weather had worsened, and that had subsequently scattered all the life rafts. Argentine and Chilean ships rescued 772 men in all from the 3rd to the 5th of May. In total, 323 men were killed of the attack. 321 were members of the ship's company, and 2 were civilians who were on board at the time. In the aftermath of the sinking of Belgrano, the legality of the sinking has been disputed due to a disagreement on the exact nature of the MEZ and whether Belgrano had been returning to port at the time of the sinking. Through a message passed via the Swiss embassy in Buenos Aires to the Argentine government 9 days before the sinking, the UK made it clear that no longer considered the 200-mile exclusion zone as a limit of its military action. On the 1st of May 1982, Admiral Juan Lombardo ordered all Argentine naval units to seek out a British task force around the Falklands and launch a so-called massive attack the following day. However, settling the controversy in 2003, the ship's captain, Hector Buanzo, confirmed that Belgrano had actually been manoeuvring, not sailing away from the exclusion zone, and had ordered to sink any British ships he could find. Furthermore, Captain Bonzo stated that any suggestion that HMS Conqueror's actions were a betrayal were utterly wrong. Rather, the submarine was carrying out its duties in accordance with the accepted rules of war. Unfortunately, the sinking occurred 14 hours after President of Peru proposed a comprehensive peace plan that called for regional unity. Although Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and diplomats in London did not see the document until after the sinking of Belgrano. Now, diplomatic efforts to this point had failed completely, and after the sinking, Argentina rejected the plan, but the UK indicated it accepted on the 5th of May. The news was subsequently dominated by military action, and the British continued to offer ceasefire terms until the 1st of June, which were, well, rejected by the military junta. In addition to the aftermath of the sinking, there was a political hellstorm going on. Argentina claimed that the sinking was an escalation of war, and she was outside the exclusion zone, and so her sinking was a war crime. Although the CO, like I said before, stated that the sinking was justified along with the Argentine Navy. Now, the General Belgrano's captain, Hector Buanzo, died on the 22nd of April 2009, aged 76. He had spent his last years working for the association called Amigos del Cruceño General Belgrano. I think that's how you said. Please don't kill me, Argentina. Essentially in English, it means Friends of the Cruiser General Belgrano, whose purpose was to help those affected by the sinking of the ship. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that's the end of that video. Hopefully you learned something new, because I most certainly did. Now, if you want to go and support the channel, there is a link in the description below to the Patreon page. I would recommend doing it, but it's up to you. Also, if you want to come and talk to me, there's a link in the description for the Discord channel. There's a couple of good guys over there. We talk about a wide variety of stuff. So yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. Hit that notification button to stay up to date with what I'm uploading, and obviously give it a like, give it a subscribe if you really want to, and comments are always good. I like reading your comments. So take care. Catch you next time.